The massive auditorium of the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with hundreds of voices. Students from dozens of worlds filled the tiered seats, their varied forms creating a tapestry of colors and shapes. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed faintly in the dim light. They all gathered here for one reason: to witness the new human instructor's first day. Trevor Hayes stood on the presentation floor, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. He was average height for a human, with short brown hair and calm brown eyes. His simple gray uniform marked him as Academy staff, but he looked so plain compared to the decorated alien officers around him. The other instructors wore armor plating, ceremonial weapons, and rank insignia that sparkled under the lights. Trevor just stood there with empty hands and a quiet expression. Instructor Kelvax rose from his seat among the faculty. He was a Krenth, standing nearly 8 feet tall with dark purple skin covered in bony ridges. His forearms crossed over his massive chest as he stared down at Trevor. Kelvax had fought in 7 wars and trained warriors for 30 years. He did not believe humans belonged in this sacred place of learning. "Human," Kelvax's voice boomed across the auditorium, "you claim to teach survival skills to our finest cadets. But what can your species possibly teach those who have mastered warfare for thousands of years?" Trevor remained calm. He had expected this. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition, joining only 5 years ago. Many species still saw them as weak primitives from a backwater world. "I teach adaptability, Instructor Kelvax. The ability to survive when everything goes wrong." "Adaptability?" Kelvax laughed, a harsh sound like grinding rocks. "Empty words. Any fool can claim skills they do not possess." He gestured with 2 of his arms toward the auditorium. "I propose a demonstration. A test of your supposed abilities." The room fell silent. Even the translator devices seemed to hold their breath. Trevor nodded slowly. "What kind of test?" Kelvax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "A simple one. You claim to teach survival and combat readiness. Very well. Create a weapon. Here. Now. In front of everyone." Trevor looked around the auditorium. "Create a weapon from what materials?" "From whatever you can find in this room." Kelvax's smile widened. "But first, let me make this fair." He turned to the security officers standing near the exits. "Remove all standard equipment from the presentation floor. All training weapons, all tools, all technology. Leave only the basic furniture." The security team moved quickly. They gathered every piece of equipment from the floor. Training swords, practice shields, computer tablets, projection devices, even the instructor's podium with its built-in controls. Within minutes, the floor stood empty except for a few chairs, 2 desks, and a long table near the back wall. Heavy curtains hung on the windows and a large display screen covered one wall. "There," Kelvax announced. "You have 30 minutes, human. Create a functional weapon from classroom furniture, or admit your teachings are worthless and resign from this academy in disgrace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some cadets leaned forward with interest. Others whispered to their neighbors, clearly believing this challenge was impossible. A few of the kinder instructors looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up to defend Trevor. Trevor stood motionless for a moment, his eyes scanning the room. He did not look worried or angry. He simply observed, taking in every detail. His gaze moved from the chairs to the desks, from the curtains to the door frames, from the floor panels to the ceiling supports. 30 seconds passed in silence. 29 minutes remaining, human," Kelvax called out with satisfaction in his voice. Trevor walked calmly to the nearest chair. It was a simple wooden chair with 4 legs, a flat seat, and a straight back with vertical support spindles. The kind of basic furniture found in classrooms across 1,000 worlds. He grabbed the chair with both hands, turned it upside down, and examined its construction. Some cadets giggled. Others shook their heads. They saw a desperate human clutching furniture while a trained warrior mocked him. Even some human cadets in the audience looked embarrassed. How could simple wood and basic tools become a weapon against modern warfare? Trevor placed the chair on the floor. He gripped one of the legs firmly with both hands and twisted. The wood creaked but held. He adjusted his grip, braced his foot against the seat, and twisted again with more force. This time the leg came free with a sharp crack. The sound echoed through the silent auditorium. He repeated the process with a second leg. Then a third. Within 5 minutes, he had disassembled the entire chair into separate pieces. Legs, seat board, back support, and the thin spindles that had formed the chair's back structure. He laid each piece on the floor in an organized line. 23 minutes, Kelvax announced. But his voice carried less mockery now. Something in Trevor's methodical movements suggested he actually had a plan. Trevor examined the chair legs closely. He selected the two that curved slightly and had the most flexibility in their grain. He tested each one by bending it gently, feeling for any hidden cracks or weak spots. Satisfied, he set them aside and moved to the desk. The desk was metal with a wooden top. Trevor opened the drawer and found nothing inside. He pulled the drawer completely out and examined the metal runners that allowed it to slide. With careful pressure, he bent one runner back and forth until the metal fatigued and snapped. He now had a crude but functional cutting edge. Using the metal edge, he began shaving and scraping at the two curved chair legs. Wood curls fell to the floor as he worked. He carved notches near the ends of both pieces. His hands moved with confidence, like someone who had done this many times before. The alien students watched in growing confusion and fascination. 15 minutes, Kelvax called. His tone had shifted. He no longer sounded amused. Trevor worked faster now. He carved deeper notches into the wood, testing the flexibility of each piece by bending them carefully. He selected the better of the two curved pieces and set the other aside. Moving to the curtains, he grabbed the heavy cord used to tie them back. It was synthetic fiber, strong and flexible. He tested its strength by pulling hard with both hands. Held firm. He tied the cord to the notches at each end of the curved wood piece. The wood bent into a deeper curve as he pulled the cord tight. When he released it, the wood sprang back, but the cord held it in that curved shape. It looked like an ancient bow, the kind humans had used thousands of years ago on Earth. But a bow needed arrows. Trevor picked up 3 of the thin spindles from the chair back. Using his improvised metal blade, he carved one end of each spindle to a point. He notched the other end to hold a bowstring. From the desk, he removed small metal brackets and attached them near the pointed ends for weight and balance. He tore strips from paper he found in a drawer and attached them near the back of each arrow for stability in flight. 5 minutes remain, Kelvax said quietly. The massive alien had stopped smiling. 200 cadets sat in absolute silence, leaning forward in their seats. Trevor stood up, holding the completed bow in his left hand and 3 arrows in his right. The weapon looked primitive and rough, nothing like the plasma rifles and energy blades used by modern soldiers. But it was unmistakably a weapon, crafted entirely from classroom materials in 25 minutes. He walked to the center of the presentation floor and faced Kelvax. "I have completed your challenge, Instructor." Kelvax stared at the bow in Trevor's hands. The massive alien instructor descended from his elevated position, his 4 arms flexing as he moved. His heavy footsteps echoed through the silent auditorium. Every cadet held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "You have created something," Kelvax admitted, his voice carrying across the room. "But a weapon must function. It must be effective. Pretty sticks tied together mean nothing in real combat." He gestured toward the back of the room where a large ballistic gel target stood against the wall. "That target is designed to test plasma weapons. It can withstand energy blasts that would cut through steel. Show me this primitive tool can do anything useful." Trevor nodded and walked toward a clear space on the floor. He positioned himself about 30 meters from the target. The distance seemed enormous for such a simple weapon. Several cadets exchanged doubtful glances. Modern weapons could strike targets from kilometers away with perfect accuracy. This human stood close enough to throw rocks. He selected one of his 3 arrows and examined it carefully. The wooden shaft was rough but straight. The metal bracket at the front gave it weight. The paper strips at the back looked fragile and useless. Trevor placed the notched end of the arrow against the bowstring and raised the weapon. His left arm extended forward, holding the bow steady. His right hand pulled the string back toward his face. The wooden bow bent further, storing energy like a coiled spring. His muscles tensed as he held the position, aiming carefully at the gel target. The room remained absolutely silent. Trevor released the string. The bow snapped forward with a sharp twang. The arrow flew across the auditorium faster than most eyes could follow. It struck the ballistic gel target with a solid thud. The arrow did not just hit the surface. It punched completely through the target, piercing the thick gel designed to stop plasma blasts. The arrow shaft stuck out from both sides of the target, still vibrating from the impact. The auditorium erupted in shocked voices. Cadets jumped from their seats. Some pointed at the target in disbelief. Others turned to their neighbors, speaking rapidly in dozens of different languages. The translator devices worked overtime to keep up with the chaos. Kelvax stood frozen. His 4 arms hung at his sides. His mouth opened but no words came out. He had expected the arrow to bounce off harmlessly. He had expected to laugh at the human's failure. Instead, he witnessed something that should not be possible. Primitive wood and string had defeated advanced defensive materials. That target, one cadet shouted above the noise, is rated to stop weapons that generate 50,000 joules of energy. The arrow had no power source, another added. Just bent wood and human muscle. Trevor remained calm. He selected his second arrow and loaded it into the bow. The first shot proved function, he said clearly, projecting his voice so everyone could hear. This shot proves precision. He raised the bow again, aiming carefully at the first arrow still embedded in the target. The cadets quieted down, realizing something special was about to happen. Even the other instructors leaned forward in their seats. Trevor pulled the string back to his cheek, held his aim for 3 steady breaths and released. The second arrow flew straight and true. It struck the back end of the first arrow with incredible accuracy. The impact split the wooden shaft of the first arrow, and the second arrow drove through, following the exact same path through the gel target. Both arrows now occupied almost the same space, one splitting the other down its length. The auditorium fell into stunned silence. That kind of precision required computer guidance systems. Modern weapons used laser targeting and automated adjustments. This human had done it with bent wood cord and his own eyesight. It seemed impossible. A Valerian cadet in the third row stood up on shaky legs. Her species was small and cautious, rarely speaking in large groups. But she could not contain her amazement. "How?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How did you calculate trajectory, wind resistance, and gravitational pull without any instruments?" Trevor lowered the bow. "I did not calculate anything. I simply practiced this skill for many years. My grandfather taught me when I was a child." He learned from his grandfather. Humans have used bows for thousands of years. We know how they work through experience, not computers. Kelvax finally found his voice. "Luck. Both shots were luck. No one can be that accurate without technology." But his words sounded weak even to himself. Trevor smiled slightly. "Instructor Kelvax, you are wearing your combat insignia on your chest. The medal with the 3 stars. May I demonstrate control as well as accuracy?" Kelvax's hand moved instinctively to his chest, covering the precious medal he had earned in battle. "You would not dare." "I will not damage it," Trevor assured him. "I will only prove that this weapon can be controlled precisely. If you trust my skill, please lower your hand." The alien instructor hesitated. Pride and fear warred in his expression. Finally, pride won. He lowered his hand, exposing the shining metal on his chest. "If you strike me, human, you will be expelled and imprisoned for assaulting a superior officer." "Understood." Trevor loaded his third and final arrow. He stood 50 meters from Kelvax now, twice the distance to the gel target. The shot was much harder. The target was smaller. And it was attached to a living being who might move. Every being in the auditorium held their breath. Some covered their eyes. Others recorded the moment on their devices. Trevor raised the bow, aimed carefully, and released the string in one smooth motion. The arrow flew through the air in a gentle arc. It passed within a hair's width of Kelvax's chest. The alien felt the wind of its passage, but the arrow never touched him. Instead, it grazed the very edge of his combat insignia, making the metal ring with a soft musical note. The arrow continued past him and embedded itself in the padded wall behind, perfectly controlled and exactly where Trevor intended. Kelvax looked down at his chest. The insignia was completely undamaged. Not a single scratch marked its surface. But he had felt the arrow pass by, felt how close it came. The human could have struck him anywhere. The shoulder, the arm, the leg. Or worse. But Trevor had chosen to demonstrate control instead of aggression. The message was clear. This weapon was deadly, accurate, and completely under the wielder's command. The alien instructor reached up with one trembling hand and touched his insignia. "I understand now," he said quietly. Then, louder so everyone could hear, "I challenged you to create a weapon from nothing. You succeeded. I challenged you to prove it functional. You exceeded all expectations. I spoke with disrespect and you responded with honor." Kelvax placed all 4 of his hands over his chest in the traditional Krenth gesture of deep respect. "Forgive my arrogance, Instructor Hayes. You have much to teach us." The auditorium remained in chaos for several minutes. Cadets from different worlds argued about what they had just witnessed. Some insisted there must be hidden technology in the bow. Others claimed Trevor had special abilities beyond normal humans. A few simply sat in shocked silence, trying to understand how something so primitive could be so effective. Kelvax raised 2 of his arms, calling for quiet. The crowd slowly settled down, though excited whispers continued in the back rows. The tall alien walked to the gel target and examined the arrows embedded in it. He touched the wooden shafts carefully as if they might explode. "This changes everything," he muttered. A door at the top of the auditorium opened. Every head turned to see who entered. Commandant Thrace walked down the steps with slow, measured movements. She was a Zephanian, tall and thin with silver skin that reflected the lights. Her species was known for wisdom and careful thought. She had led the Academy for 20 years and commanded respect from every species in the coalition. The room fell completely silent. Even Kelvax straightened his posture and placed his arms at his sides in a formal stance. Commandant Thrace rarely attended demonstrations. Her presence meant something important was about to happen. She reached the presentation floor and walked directly to Trevor. Her large eyes studied him with an intensity that made even the confident human feel nervous. "Instructor Hayes," she said in a voice like wind through leaves. "I watched your demonstration from my office. I saw everything." Trevor waited, unsure if he was about to be praised or punished. "Yes, Commandant. That weapon you created. Explain to me why it works." She gestured to the bow still in his hands. "Not the mechanics. I can see it stores and releases energy. Tell me why a species would develop such a tool when they could create energy weapons instead." Trevor thought carefully before answering. "Humans developed bows thousands of years ago, long before we understood energy or plasma. We needed to hunt for food and defend ourselves from predators. We looked at what we had available. Wood from trees. Fibers from plants and animals. Stone and bone for points. We took materials from our environment and made them into tools. Other species did the same," Thrace pointed out. "The Krenth made spears. The Voth made clubs. Why did humans perfect the bow?" "Because we were not the strongest species on our planet," Trevor explained. "We could not fight large predators with our bare hands. We were not the fastest either. We could not outrun danger. So we learned to fight from a distance. We learned to make weapons that extended our reach. A human with a bow could kill prey or defend against threats from 30 meters away. Safety through distance and accuracy." Thrace nodded slowly. "And when you had better materials? When you discovered metals and later technology?" "We improved the design," Trevor said. "We made stronger bows from better materials. We invented crossbows that stored more energy. Eventually we created firearms that used chemical reactions. Then energy weapons. But the principle remained the same. Humans adapt our environment to meet our needs. We do not wait for the perfect tool. We make tools from whatever we have." The Commandant turned to face the assembled cadets. "Do you understand what you witnessed today? This is not about primitive weapons or showing off ancient skills. This is about the human survival philosophy." She pointed at the bow. Instructor Hayes was given nothing. No weapons. No tools. Just furniture in 30 minutes. Any of you would have failed this test. You would have stood there thinking about the weapons you did not have. The tools you needed but could not access. You would have failed because you were taught to rely on technology. A Thoraxian cadet in the front row, built like a tank with thick armor plating, raised one massive claw. "Commandant, we are trained with the best weapons in the galaxy. Why should we learn to make primitive tools?" "Because battles do not always go as planned," Thrace answered sharply. "What happens when your ship crashes on a hostile world? When your weapons are destroyed or lost? When you are separated from your unit with nothing but the clothes you wear? Modern soldiers become helpless without their technology. They wait for rescue or they die." She walked to the gel target and pulled out one of the arrows. "Humans do not wait. They look around and ask a different question. Not what do I have, but what can I make? They see a chair and think, weapon. They see a cord and think, bowstring. They see their environment as a resource, not an obstacle." She held up the arrow for everyone to see. "This is why humans survived on a death world called Earth. This is why they reached the stars despite starting with nothing but stone tools. This is why we need them to teach our cadets." Kelvax stepped forward, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Commandant, I spoke against the human instructor program. I believed we had nothing to learn from such a young species. I was wrong. Completely wrong." He turned to Trevor and bowed his head, a gesture of deep shame among his people. "Instructor Hayes, I challenged you to embarrass you. I wanted you to fail so humans would be removed from our academy. Instead, you have shown me how limited my thinking has become." Trevor accepted the apology with a small nod. "You gave me a fair test, Instructor Kelvax. I hold no anger." "I would request permission," Kelvax continued, still addressing the Commandant, To be the first to enroll in whatever training Instructor Hayes provides. I have fought in 7 wars, but I have never learned to think the way humans think. I want to learn this skill before I am too old to change. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the cadet sections. The Valerian who had spoken earlier stood again. I would also like to enroll. My species is small and weak by galactic standards. We survive through caution and hiding. But maybe we could survive through adaptation instead. More cadets stood. A Kepler scientist. A Drath warrior. Even some human cadets who had never learned these old Earth skills. Within minutes, over half the auditorium was on their feet, requesting to join the training program. Commandant Thrace raised her hand for silence. I did not call this assembly just to watch a demonstration. I called it because I have already made a decision. She pulled a data tablet from her robe and activated it. Effective immediately, all cadets at this academy will complete a new required course, Human Adaptive Combat. Instructor Hayes will design the curriculum. Every student will learn to see their environment as humans do. To improvise. To adapt. To survive without technology. The room erupted in excited chatter. Some cadets cheered. Others looked nervous about learning something so different from standard training. The instructors gathered in small groups, discussing how this would change their programs. Thrace turned to Trevor. You will need teaching assistants. Choose carefully. This program could change how the entire coalition military approaches combat and survival. She paused, then added quietly, the council will resist this change. Traditional instructors will fight against it. But I believe you have something important to teach us. Something we have forgotten in our reliance on technology. Do not let me down, Instructor Hayes. Trevor looked at the bow in his hands, then at the hundreds of faces watching him. I will do my best, Commandant. 3 months passed since Trevor's demonstration. His classroom filled with eager cadets every morning, species from across the galaxy gathered to learn human survival methods. But 3 students stood out among the others, each representing the challenges Trevor faced in teaching adaptation. Corporal Dren was a Thoraxian, built like a walking fortress. His species valued strength and discipline above all else. They followed orders perfectly and never questioned their superiors. Dren struggled with Trevor's lessons because improvisation meant making choices without clear commands. In one exercise, Trevor gave him a metal pipe and asked him to create 3 different tools. Dren stood frozen for 10 minutes, waiting for specific instructions. When Trevor explained he must decide for himself, Dren looked genuinely confused. But what if I choose wrong? He asked. Then you learn from the mistake and choose differently next time, Trevor answered. Adaptation requires accepting that failure is part of learning. Cadet Vera was a Kepler, a species known for logic and scientific thinking. Her people could calculate complex mathematics in their heads and memorize entire libraries of information. She excelled at understanding the principles behind Trevor's techniques. She could explain exactly why a bow worked, calculate the energy transfer, and predict arrow trajectories. But when Trevor took away her time to think, she panicked. During a timed exercise where she had 5 minutes to create a cutting tool, Vera spent 4 minutes analyzing options and only 1 minute actually building. Her tool worked perfectly, but she ran out of time. Analysis is important, Trevor told her gently. But sometimes you must act before you fully understand. Trust your instincts. Make your best guess and adjust as you go. The third standout was Cadet Lira, a Valerian. Her species was small, barely reaching Trevor's waist, with delicate frames and nervous dispositions. Valerians survived through caution, avoiding danger rather than confronting it. Lira joined the academy to prove her worth, but she jumped at sudden noises and hesitated to take risks. When Trevor asked students to climb a rope using improvised handholds, Lira stood at the bottom shaking. I will fall, she whispered. I am too weak. Trevor knelt beside her. Strength is not just muscles. It is also determination. Watch how the rope moves. Feel where the knots are. Your light weight is actually an advantage here. You need less strength to pull yourself up. Slowly, Lira climbed. She fell twice but tried again. By the end of class, she reached the top, exhausted but smiling. These 3 cadets became Trevor's focus. If he could teach them to adapt, he could teach anyone. Dren needed to learn independent thinking. Vera needed to trust action over analysis. Lira needed to find courage despite fear. They represented the fundamental challenges every species faced when learning the human approach to survival. Then everything changed one cold morning. Trevor was teaching his class how to purify water using natural materials when Commandant Thrace entered the room. Her silver face looked troubled. Instructor Hayes, I need you in the command center immediately. Bring Corporal Dren, Cadet Vera, and Cadet Lira. Trevor dismissed the class and followed Thrace with his 3 students. They walked through secure corridors to the Academy's Military Operations Center. Holographic displays showed star maps and ship positions. Officers moved between stations, their faces grim. "We have a situation," Thrace explained, pointing to a distant star system on the main display. A Coalition patrol ship crashed on Kragnor 5. 12 soldiers survived the crash, but they are stranded. The planet is extremely hostile. Toxic atmosphere. Dangerous predators. Extreme temperature shifts. The rescue window is closing fast. An older officer, Commander Pike, stepped forward. "We sent a recovery team with full equipment. Their transport was destroyed by atmospheric storms. We lost contact with them. We cannot risk more ships or soldiers. The Council has ordered us to abandon the rescue mission." "Abandon them?" Dren's voice boomed with outrage. "We leave no soldier behind. That is Coalition law." "The law also prohibits suicide missions," Pike replied coldly. "Sending more troops to die accomplishes nothing." Trevor studied the holographic display showing Kragnor 5. "What equipment do the stranded soldiers have?" "None," Thrace answered. "The crash destroyed everything. No weapons, no survival gear, no communication devices. They have only their uniforms and whatever they can salvage from the wreckage." "How long can they survive?" Vera asked, her analytical mind already calculating. 3 days maximum, Pike said. "The planet's atmosphere is slowly poisoning them. Even if predators don't kill them, the environment will." Lyra's small voice trembled. "Then they are already dead. No one can survive there without equipment." Trevor looked at his 3 students. He saw fear in Lyra's eyes. Confusion in Dren's expression. Vera's mind was probably racing through impossible scenarios. Then he looked at Thrace. "I volunteer to lead the rescue mission." The room fell silent. Pike laughed harshly. "Did you not hear me? This is a suicide mission. The planet will kill you within hours." "Not if I adapt," Trevor said calmly. "Kragnor 5 has an atmosphere, which means it has plants or something producing oxygen mixed with the toxins. It has predators, which means there is a food chain and resources to exploit. It has extreme conditions, but conditions can be managed with proper preparation." He turned to his students. "And I will not go alone." Dren straightened immediately. "I volunteer, sir. You taught me to think for myself. I choose to attempt this rescue." Vera hesitated only a moment before nodding. "The statistical probability of success is low. But probability is not certainty. I volunteer." All eyes turned to Lira. The small Valerian was shaking, her large eyes wide with terror. She looked at the holographic planet spinning on the display. A death world. A place that would kill her fragile species in minutes. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Trevor knelt beside her. "Lira, you do not have to come. This mission is extremely dangerous. No one will think less of you if you decline." "But I will think less of myself," Lira whispered. She took a shaky breath. "You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. 12 soldiers need help. I am terrified. But I volunteer." Pike shook his head in disbelief. "You are all insane. 1 human and 3 cadets with no equipment against a death world? You will die before you even reach the survivors." "Maybe," Trevor admitted. "But those soldiers are waiting to die right now. At least we give them a chance. At least we try." Commandant Thrace studied Trevor's face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You have 6 hours to prepare. I cannot officially approve this mission. The Council forbids it. But I can arrange for a transport to have a navigation malfunction that accidentally drops you on Kragnor 5. After that, you are on your own." Trevor smiled. "Understood, Commandant. We will need no equipment. Just transportation to the planet's surface." "No equipment?" Pike sputtered. "That is madness." "That is human adaptive combat," Trevor corrected. "We work with what we find, not what we bring. If we succeed, those 12 soldiers come home. If we fail attempting the impossible instead of abandoning our own." He looked at his 3 students. "Get some rest. We leave in 6 hours. And remember everything I taught you. Your lives depend on it now." The transport ship shook violently as it entered Kragnor 5's atmosphere. Trevor and his 3 students sat in the cargo bay wearing only their standard uniforms. No weapons, no tools, no survival packs. Commander Pike had tried one last time to convince them to take equipment, but Trevor refused. "Equipment makes you dependent," he had said. "We need to prove adaptation works with nothing." The ship's pilot called back through the intercom. Landing zone ahead. The crash site is 10 kilometers north. I am detecting life signs from the survivors, but they are weak. You have maybe 2 days before the toxins kill them. The ship touched down roughly on rocky terrain. Good luck. You are going to need it. The cargo door opened. Hot, thick air rushed in, carrying a chemical smell that burned their throats. Trevor stepped out first, immediately covering his mouth and nose with his sleeve. The planet's sky was a sickly yellow color. Strange plants with purple leaves grew between jagged rocks. In the distance, something large moved through the vegetation, hunting. The atmosphere, Vera gasped, her logical mind analyzing even as she struggled to breathe. The toxins are heavier than oxygen. They sink to ground level. We need to filter them or stay in elevated positions. Or create respirators, Trevor said, scanning the alien landscape. He pointed to a cluster of plants with thick, fibrous leaves. Those plants survive here, which means they either filter toxins or produce oxygen. We need to test them. Dren marched forward without hesitation, his rigid training demanding action. But Trevor grabbed his arm. Wait. Never rush into unknown environments. Observe first. Look at the ground near those plants. See the bones? Small skeletons lay scattered around the plant cluster. Something had died there repeatedly. Lira's sharp eyes noticed more details. The bones are arranged in a pattern. Animals were attracted to the plants, then killed. It is a trap. Good observation, Trevor praised. Nature often puts defenses around valuable resources. We need those plants, but we must be smarter than the animals that died. He picked up a long stick and threw it toward the plants. Immediately, vine-like tendrils shot up from the ground, wrapping around the stick and pulling it down. Sharp thorns pierced the wood. Defense mechanism, Vera concluded. But the reaction is triggered by ground pressure. If we approach from above, we avoid the trap. Working together, they built a simple bridge using fallen branches wedged between rocks. They crossed above the trap plants and carefully harvested leaves from the top, where the defensive vines could not reach. The leaves were thick and porous, filled with tiny holes that filtered air. Trevor showed them how to fold the leaves into masks that covered their mouths and noses. Breathe slowly through the leaves, he instructed. Let the plant material filter the toxins. It is not perfect, but it will keep us alive longer. They moved north toward the crash site. The terrain was harsh, filled with sharp rocks that cut their boots and steep slopes that exhausted them. Lira struggled with the pace, her small legs unable to match the others' stride. But she never complained. When she fell behind, Dren would wait for her, his rigid nature now including loyalty to his team. As night fell, the temperature dropped dramatically. Their breath came out in clouds despite the earlier heat. We need shelter and fire, Trevor said. Vera, analyze our options. The Kepler cadet forced herself to think quickly instead of overthinking. Those rock formations create natural wind breaks. We can build walls between them using smaller stones. For fire, we need friction and dry fuel. They worked through the evening, building a shelter from rocks and dried plant material. Trevor showed them how to create fire using a bow drill made from sticks and plant fibers. Dren's strength helped spin the drill faster. Vera's precise angles made the friction more effective. Lira's small hands gathered the driest tinder. When the first spark caught and grew into flame, all 3 students felt pride in their accomplishment. The next morning they found the crash site. The patrol ship was destroyed, scattered across a rocky valley. 12 soldiers huddled in the wreckage, sick and dying. Their species varied, 2 humans, 3 Krenth, Fervorians and 3 Keplers. All looked hopeless. A human sergeant named Walsh stared at Trevor with hollow eyes. You came without equipment? Are you insane? We are all dead now. You are dead if you give up, Trevor replied firmly. But you are alive if you choose to adapt. Look around you. See problems or see resources. For the next 2 days, Trevor and his students taught the survivors everything they had learned. They built better respirators from multiple plant layers. They created water collectors that condensed moisture during temperature shifts. They fashioned weapons from the bones of dead predators, using sharp edges and long handles to keep dangerous animals at a distance. Dren taught the soldiers how to follow Trevor's instructions even when they seemed strange. The rigid Thoraxian had learned that human methods worked even if they appeared illogical at first. Vera helped calculate which plants were edible and which were poisonous, using careful observation instead of laboratory equipment. Lira showed them that even small, weak beings could contribute. Her sharp eyes spotted dangers before anyone else, and her gentle hands treated injuries with improvised bandages. A large predator attacked on the 3rd day. It looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard, with massive claws and armored skin. The soldiers panicked, reaching for weapons they no longer had. But Trevor remained calm. It is just an animal. It follows patterns. Watch how it moves. See how it favors its left side? An old injury. Exploit that. Using coordinated attacks with their bone spears, they drove the predator away without any casualties. The soldiers stared at their improvised weapons in amazement. They had defeated a Death World predator using nothing but rocks, bones, and teamwork. By the fourth day, they had established a functioning settlement. Shelters stood against the wind. Fires burned for warmth and cooking. Water collectors provided clean drinking sources. Food came from trapped small animals and edible plants. The toxic atmosphere no longer threatened them because everyone wore effective respirators. When the rescue ships finally arrived on the fifth day, expecting to recover bodies, they instead found healthy survivors working together like a small community. The rescue team's commander stepped out of his ship and stopped in shock. How is this possible? You had no equipment. No supplies. This planet should have killed you in hours. Sergeant Walsh stepped forward, wearing a respirator made from plant leaves and carrying a spear fashioned from bone and rock. We had something better than equipment, Commander. We had a teacher who showed us how to adapt. How to see resources instead of obstacles. How to survive like humans survive. 3 months later, back at the academy, a special ceremony was held. Commandant Thrace stood before the assembled cadets and officers. On a pedestal behind her rested Trevor's original bow, the one he had built from classroom furniture on his first day. This weapon represents more than human ingenuity, Thrace announced. It represents a philosophy that saved 16 lives on Kragnor 5. A philosophy that will now be taught throughout the Coalition military. We have relied on technology for so long that we forgot the most important tool, our minds. She turned to Trevor and his 3 students. Instructor Hayes, Corporal Dren, Cadet Vera, and Cadet Lira, you are awarded the Commandant's Star for exceptional courage and creative problem-solving under impossible conditions. You proved that adaptation is not just a human trait. It can be learned. It can be taught. And it can save lives. Kelvac stepped forward, the instructor who had once challenged Trevor with mockery. I have a confession, the tall alien said. I designed that first challenge to humiliate you. To prove humans did not belong here. Instead, you taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. The weapons we build are never as important as the minds that build them. Trevor accepted the medal with quiet dignity. He looked at his 3 students, Dren who learned to think independently, Vera who learned to act without perfect information, and Lira who found courage despite her fears. They had proven his teaching methods worked. More importantly, they had proven that any species could learn to adapt like humans. The bow remained in the Academy Museum for generations. Students from countless worlds would stop to examine it, reading the plaque beneath, built in 30 minutes from classroom furniture by instructor Trevor Hayes. A reminder that true strength comes not from the tools we possess, but from our ability to create tools from whatever we find. The human gift to the galaxy, the power of adaptation. And in classrooms across Coalition space, instructors taught students to look at broken chairs and see weapons, at hostile environments and see resources, at impossible challenges and see opportunities. Because Trevor Hayes had shown them that survival was not about having everything you need. It was about making what you need from whatever you have.